I must have made sticky date pudding like hundreds of times. Everywhere I've worked, I've made it for dessert because it's just a crowd favourite and is one of the most delicious desserts I think you can have. And for years, I've been making Stephanie Alexander's recipe. However, I find it too sweet. And then just a few months back, I found a handwritten recipe that someone must have given me years ago for a sticky date pudding, and it is the perfect sweetness level. And the addition of chopped pecan nuts just sends this sticky date pudding to the next level. I made it for my parents when they were here and they just absolutely loved it. And you know what? It converts beautifully to gluten-free. And this is how you do it. Now the measurements are very specific. So you'll need 175 grams of pitted dates, and just ordinary dates. You don't need fancy dates for this. And just cut them in half, and this ensures that there's no pips in there. And place them into a little saucepan. Then measure 180 ml of just water and pour that over the dates, and take this to the stove. And simply bring it to the boil and then add 1 teaspoon of bicarb soda or baking soda. It'll foam up. Turn off the heat, give it a stir, and then set that aside for 15 minutes for the dates to soften. Then into a large bowl, add 75 grams of softened butter and 150 grams of light brown sugar. Cream it until it's creamed well. Then add 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. What I'm going to do now, it's a little trick actually, is just take a tablespoon of flour and put it into the mixture. And then I'm going to stir this in. And now I'm going to add eggs one at a time. You'll need 2 eggs. And that little bit of flour will help stop the eggs from curdling and splitting. And then take the remaining flour. We took a tablespoon out of this just earlier, but that's 170 grams of plain flour, 2 teaspoons of baking powder, and sift that into the mixture. Now if you're gluten-free like me, add 1 teaspoon of psyllium husks, not the powder, but just the other variety. And mix that all together. There's still 5 minutes to go with the date mixture, which is really good for a gluten-free batter anyway. It needs to rest for a little while. And in the meantime, I'm going to preheat the oven to a moderate oven, so 160 degrees with a fan or 180 degrees without a fan. So a moderately slow oven. Oops, I'll take last night's tray out of the oven. Then I take the mixture that has been resting and add the dates, which have now been steeping for 15 minutes, and all the liquid in there. Gently stir it around. And I've got a 22 centimetre square cake tin here, which I've lightly greased with some butter. And you don't have to line it with baking paper, but because I want to get it out and show you how lovely it looks, I'm going to line it with a bit of baking paper. And then pour this mixture into the pan. And bake it for around 35 to 40 minutes, depending on your oven. I'll check it after 35 minutes. And in the meantime, I'm going to have a clean up and then I'll make the sauce. So first of all, I'm just going to chop some pecan nuts. And the recipe says 2 tablespoons, but I put in, and I weighed it for you, about 60 grams. I really love the pecan nuts in this. And what I do is just chop them, not too fine, because I like the little bit of crunch that they add. just like that. Then into a small saucepan I simply put 200 ml of cream, 80 grams of brown sugar and 60 grams of butter. And I take this over to the stove, and over a medium heat I just stir it until it comes to the boil and the butter is melted. It only takes a few minutes. And you just have to stir it occasionally. And once it does come back to the boil and the butter is all melted, just remove it from the heat. It will thicken a little bit as it cools, but it is a runnier sauce and that's how it's meant to be. And at this point, I just add the crushed pecan nuts, well, the chopped pecan nuts, and give it a good stir. And wait for the sticky date pudding to be finished in the oven. Now the sticky date has been in there for 30 minutes and I notice that it's browning a bit on top. It's not quite ready. So all I do is put a sheet of baking paper or foil over the top so it doesn't brown too much on the top. It's ready. 35 minutes this took. And if you take a skewer, it should come out clean, which it does. And it smells delicious. So while it's still warm, what I like to do is just to spoon over a bit of that sauce so it soaks in a little bit. And then I'll wait for it to cool down, let it rest for about 10 minutes and come back and cut into it and show you what it looks like. But it smells beautiful. And you can cut them any size you wish. But you know, this is so delicious. You'll want a fairly large piece, I'm sure. And you can serve it with a little extra sauce and some cream, ice cream or custard. My favourite actually is single pouring cream, but my Mike just loves whipped cream. So a nice generous dollop of unsweetened whipped cream. And there you have one of the most delicious desserts that is pretty simple to make and it's not too sweet, just the perfect sweetness. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoy this recipe and I hope it becomes a keeper in your house as well. Hopefully I'll see you again soon.